friend. It's great to be with you on this episode of the Church Tips Podcast, and I have the privilege today to hang out with my buddy John Dougherty from the great state of Georgia. Georgia Bulldogs, are you a Bulldog?
I am a Bulldog, baby. Come on.
I'm
all
a
day.
Hawkeye. You see, we get going with you SEC and Big Ten people, and
yes.
I just keep saying to you SEC people are a bunch of Big Ten wannabes. And
okay. The podcast is over. I'm sorry. I got to go. No.
Your Georgia pastors have very little appreciation for these stupid remarks of mine. So
come on.
Anyway, hey, great to be with you today, John. Thanks for slicing off a little time. Today, we're going to talk about the whole issue of staffing in the local church context. So John has responsibilities for how many churches are you responsible for?
Currently 190.
190 churches in the state of Georgia, and he provides great leadership for them. And a part of the issue we deal with in the local church is staffing. Many churches, of course, just the pastor, but he or she has key volunteers that help make things happen. But other churches have the privilege to have a staff member or two or three or four or many more. And John really has some perspective he wants to bring to the table to help us think through our staffing needs in the immediate and in the future. So why don't you just get us a jump start on this, John, of what you're seeing as you lead these churches?
Well, Dick, thank you for having me. I appreciate your friendship and the blessings that you show our Georgia pastors and all that you do through Leaders.Church and the cohort we're doing. I'll tell you, in the early days of ministry, we could go out and we could look for staff, and there was, you could throw a rock in any direction and hit a youth pastor or a children's pastor or whatnot, because there were just this wave of people wanting to do it. The times have changed. As a matter of fact, as a overseer, district superintendent in my district, I get at least a minimum of one call a day, sometimes two, sometimes up to five, from pastors saying, "Hey, I need this staff person. Do you know anyone?" And what we wind up doing is we wind up sort of cannibalizing the staff of other churches. Now, I know that necessity is there, and we've got to fill our staffing needs. But what I have seen work the best is, regardless of church size, basically establishing a farm team. I know sports analogies are the lowest form of communication, but establishing a farm team in-house, and of course it's scalable, on let's say you're the only paid staff person at a local church, you can still do this. It will be on a smaller scale, but basically growing our own staff. They already have the corporate DNA of the church already. You have deep personal relationships with them. So let's say you're the only paid staff person at a church of 150, 200. You should never go to lunch by yourself. You should never go run errands by yourself. There should always be a person, whether it be a young person. And I know that we've kind of thrown the age demographic out, and when it comes to recruiting staff, because it may be someone who's middle-aged looking for a career change or just feeling the call of God later in life. But growing that own farm team locally in your church and basically putting them into those staff positions and not relying on brick and mortar institutions to produce young ministers, not relying on schools of ministry. Now, if you have a church of size and you have resources and you can establish your own school of ministry or training facility or something along those lines, praise the Lord. You can grow your own. Right. But it is not just dependent upon availability of resources. Growing up, I had a pastor just kind of put his arm around me and just say, "Hey, I want you to just kind of do life." Well, come to find out, what I learned later on, he was discipling me into a ministry context. Right. And I was doing ministry. I wasn't paid. They didn't pay me. He bought my lunch occasionally, but there was this heart to please Jesus with my life. And so I found that was very successful in working with me. And I'm seeing that work in the local church context as well, where these churches are basically raising up their own staff.
Well, I am so glad to hear you say that, John. I'm having similar kinds of conversations with guys, particularly ones, and we find that it doesn't meet their immediate need. If they haven't done this, if you haven't been preparing people and all of a sudden you need a youth guy or gal, you can't just presto bango have it appear. But for those who will hear what we're talking about today and actually begin to put things in place to bring people along, you'll be amazed at what can happen.
Yeah.
I've told people, take people in your church out of the box that you have them in. You've got them in a box that they're a department manager or a general manager of a Walmart.
Yes.
And you say that's their profession, or they're an insurance agent. That's their profession. And we're grateful for those professions and the incomes they make and the ties that we're grateful for all that. But that very point you just mentioned about people, particularly in mid-age, we don't know what the Lord might be saying to their heart in terms of potential career change. Yeah. And the more we can do to help build a farm team and be willing to think of somebody in a career field to potentially come into ministry is gold. It really is.
So let me give you an example of what you're talking about. So we have a gentleman who's pastoring a church. He is the COO of a major hospital chain, $1 billion budget, thousands of people in his downline, was discipled in a local church setting by a pastor. He was just attending, and then he began teaching Sunday school, and he's serving and all these other things. And through that season of discipling, here he is pastoring a church. This guy has the capacity to do so much, but God spoke to his heart and said, I've called you into this later in life. And so here he is, lead pastoring a congregation now. And that's a great example of what you're talking about.
Well, and it really is. And, you know, what I've told guys and gals, you know, find yourself a little 6 or 7 week devotional study that you do with 4 or 5 hand-picked people.
Yes.
Pick the book of Nehemiah, do a little study. You don't tell them on the front end, hey, I'm going to disciple you so you become my youth pastor someday. You're just discipling them and doing the very kind of thing you just mentioned, John. And you're sitting around in this setting together where you're studying the book of Nehemiah. And here's what you want to watch for. Are they attentive to what you're talking about? Are they doing the assignment? Are they reading? How are they responding to your leadership in the group? What are they doing to lead in the group? Are they showing up? You're watching a variety of things, patterns that you would say, that's the kind of thing I want in my staff members of the future. And you just do that over and over and over again. Not everybody of your 4 or 5 people are going to matriculate into that, but you don't need everybody. You need a youth pastor.
Right.
You need a children's pastor or something.
Yes.
So I would say the more you can do of that, the better you're going to be.
And it is time intensive. It does require on our part. And so we have had the mindset in the last 30, 40 years that we depend on other institutions to produce our staff. But there's nobody that's going to have your vision for your church, have your corporate DNA, your church DNA, and have your leadership DNA more than the individual that you raise up to fill those staff positions. And yes, it's a lot of work, but I think the product at the end is going to be better than anything you'll be able to draw from another organization. So personally, I lean into that. And even me now, I take people, even though I have a large organization, I'm still taking 1, 2, or 3 and grooming them into these positions of leadership because we do see the potential in them. And I think that that's really where the church is going to be going in the future.
Yeah, no, that's good. You know, in the immediate, I've dealt with a few churches and they've said, okay, I've got to find somebody. You know, you can do the kind of thing John referenced here a few minutes ago that, you know, what we've always done. We get on the phone and we try to rip somebody off of some other church. And we don't use those terms, but that, you know, what is God saying to you? We do those kinds of things.
Yes.
Or you can engage a search firm, which is fairly new to the landscape in the last 10, 15 years. There's Slingshot Group out there. There's Vanderbloemen, and we're not endorsing one or another or any of them, but you do have to pay. Different than calling your buddy and saying, like people call you, hey, John, I need such and such. You do have to pay for that. If your church is in a position to do that, it would be, we're in the immediate. If you haven't trained people internally, that is one way to get it done, and probably get it done quicker with less headaches. But money's going to be out of your pocket to do that.
Exactly. So. And just talking about economy of effort and expenses, yes, it is going to be time intensive to raise your own. And yes, you may have an immediate need, and I understand that, but you're going to spend less ultimately raising up your own, and you'll have a higher degree of quality in that individual than you would be hiring a headhunter to go out and snipe staff from other churches. And I know we do cannibalize those. And look, it's necessity. I get that. I understand. And so I'm not in any way condemning anyone. You've got to fill those needs. But man, I think if you get proactive now and start really drawing those leaders up, you're going to find out that you've made a very valuable investment.
Well, that's good. John, give us a parting shot here. If the viewers, the guy or the gal listening to this, they say, okay, Dick and John, I'm with you. What would be the parting shot you'd say? If you don't remember anything we said at all, you got to remember this. What would that be?
I'll tell you what the Lord was speaking to me this morning. Is it the local church pastor? Sometimes we get so into leading, and we get so into, and we made such a profound life and emotional investment into our church. We forget sometimes that God is more invested and more concerned about the success of your church than you are.
Yeah.
He is more concerned about that. It is ever present in his mind. And for me, there is comfort and actually some liberation in the fact that I know that God is more concerned about the success of this ministry than we are. And so we need to rest in that. And yes, we need to put forth the effort, and we need to work hard, but we also need to remember God is ever present in that, and he is more concerned about it than we are.
Oh, that's so good. That's so good. John Dougherty, thank you very, very much for taking time to hang out with me on this key subject. I mean, it's boots on the ground. This is right where we live as pastors when we're trying to fill staff positions and to continue to move the ministry forward. I greatly appreciate you taking time to be with us.
Absolutely. Anytime.
To the viewers, we thank you for hanging out with us on this Church Tips podcast. I would say if you have need of anything relative to your church, we'd be honored to have you go to Leaders.Church. We provide a variety of resources for you. Also, Church University. There's a number of full courses available to you. We just stand ready to serve the local church in any way we can. So to all who have hung with us on the podcast today, make it a great one today, and be blessed.
Hey, Jonathan here, real quick before you go. Everything in your ministry rises and falls on your leadership. So investing in your leadership is essential to staying healthy and growing the ministry. And that's why I want to invite you to join us inside the Leaders.Church membership. This online streaming service for pastors gives you access to more than 300 videos plus training material to level up your leadership and improve your ministry skills. If you'd like to do that, I want to invite you to go to Leaders.Church/boost. Again, that's Leaders.Church/boost. Well, thanks again for joining us on the Church Tips podcast. We'll look forward to seeing you next time.